When an avoidant loses a good woman, something strange happens. Something they never saw coming. And honestly, something most people never talk about. You think the avoidant just moves on, right? You think they shrug it off, go back to their independent little world, maybe download a dating app and forget you ever existed. That is what everyone assumes. That is the comfortable story we tell ourselves when we are the ones left wondering what went wrong. But here is the truth. And this truth is going to hit some of you harder than you are ready for. The avoidant does not forget. They spiral. Quietly, privately, in ways nobody sees. And by the time they realize what they lost, it is usually too late. Not always, but usually. If you have ever loved someone who kept pulling away, if you have ever been the one giving everything while they gave just enough to keep you there, if you have ever cried at 3 in the morning wondering why someone who clearly cared about you could not just let themselves love you properly, then you need to hear every single word I am about to say. Because this is not just about avoidance. This is about you. This is about what you allow, what you deserve, and what happens on both sides of this painful equation when it finally falls apart. So before we go any further, drop the word clarity in the comments right now. Not because it is a fun little exercise, but because if you are watching this, you are probably someone who has been confused for a long time. Someone who deserves to finally understand what has been happening to them. And we want to know you are here. We are building something real on this channel, and we genuinely need your support to get there. We are working toward 1,000 subscribers, and we are not close yet. So if this speaks to you, hit subscribe right now. It costs you nothing, and it means everything to us. Now let us get into this properly. First, you need to understand something fundamental about how an avoidant is wired. And I do not mean this in a way that excuses their behavior. Understanding someone is not the same as excusing them. But you cannot navigate something you do not understand. So let us actually understand it. An avoidant person grew up learning that closeness was dangerous. Not necessarily dangerous in a dramatic, obvious way. Sometimes it was subtle. Maybe every time they expressed a need, they were dismissed. Maybe they reached out for comfort and were met with coldness. Maybe the people who were supposed to be their safe place were inconsistent, unreliable, or emotionally unavailable themselves. So the child adapted. Children are incredibly smart at adapting. They learned that needing people leads to disappointment. They learned that depending on someone creates vulnerability, and vulnerability creates pain. So they built a wall, a very efficient, very convincing wall. And then they grew up. And that wall came with them. Now here is the part that most people miss entirely. The avoidant does not know they have a wall. Or if they do know it intellectually, they do not feel it the way you feel it. To them, they are just being normal. They are just living their life. They value their space, their independence, their freedom. Those things feel like strengths to them. They feel like health. What they do not see, what they genuinely cannot see without real work and real self-awareness, is that their wall does not just keep pain out, it keeps love out too. So when a good woman comes along, someone warm, someone real, someone who sees them and chooses them and shows up consistently, the avoidant is pulled in 2 directions at once. They are drawn to her. They feel things for her they might not have felt for anyone in a long time, maybe ever. But the closer she gets, the more their nervous system starts to panic. Not because she is doing anything wrong, because closeness itself triggers them. Because intimacy, real intimacy, feels like a threat to the self they have spent their entire life protecting. So they pull back. They create distance. They go cold. They find reasons to criticize her, to nitpick, to focus on small incompatibilities. They tell themselves maybe she is too needy, maybe she is too intense, maybe the relationship is just not quite right. And she, being a good woman, a woman with patience and love and probably too much tolerance for uncertainty, tries harder. She gives more. She adjusts. She waits until she does not anymore. Because good women have a limit. Real ones do. They can be patient, endlessly patient, but they are not bottomless. They are not empty vessels waiting to be filled with whatever scraps of affection the avoidant decides to offer this week. And so she leaves. Or she pulls back so far that the relationship dies quietly. Or she has a conversation, a real one, that makes it clear she is done waiting for someone to choose her the way she has been choosing them. And this is the moment everything changes for the avoidant. Here is what happens, and this is the part I really want you to pay attention to. In the beginning, when she first pulls back or leaves, the avoidant feels something unexpected. Relief. Not relief that she is gone, not celebration, nothing cruel like that. Just a strange, automatic sense of pressure lifting. The constant closeness, the emotional demands, the intimacy they were not fully equipped to handle. It is gone, and their nervous system exhales. This is the part that is so confusing for women, because sometimes the avoidant seems fine, immediately, weirdly fine, and she is sitting there devastated, wondering how they could possibly be okay. Wondering if she ever mattered at all. And that apparent okayness feels like the final confirmation that she never really did. But here is what is actually happening beneath that surface. The avoidant is running on autopilot. They are in the familiar territory of aloneness, which their entire nervous system knows how to handle. Aloneness is safe. Aloneness is known. They are not actually processing the loss yet. They are just existing in the absence of pressure, and their system is registering that as relief. Give it a few weeks, because that relief has a shelf life. And when it expires, what comes next is something the avoidant is completely unprepared for. The missing starts. Not the anxious, frantic, desperate missing that someone with anxious attachment might feel immediately after a breakup. The avoidant does not do it that way. Their missing is slower, quieter, and in many ways more devastating because of it. It starts with small things. A song she liked playing somewhere unexpected. A restaurant they went to once showing up in a suggested places app. A moment of something funny happening and the instinct to text her, followed by the sudden remembering that they cannot do that anymore. That they chose this, whether directly or by default. And here is where it gets really interesting. The avoidant starts to rewrite history. In their heads, quietly, without anyone else knowing, they begin to remember her differently. All those things they used to find suffocating, her warmth, her openness, her wanting to be close, they start to look different now. Now that she is not there, her warmth sounds like comfort. Her openness sounds like honesty. Her wanting to be close sounds like love. Real love. The kind they actually wanted, underneath all that fear. And they realize, with a slowness that is almost cruel, that they had it. They actually had it. And they let it go. Or they pushed it away. Or they were so busy managing their own internal discomfort that they never fully appreciated what was standing right in front of them. This is the avoidance grief. It does not look like the grief we see in movies. It does not look like someone crying on a bathroom floor or calling at 2 a.m. It looks like someone going very quiet. Someone who seems distracted at work. Someone who starts being uncharacteristically honest with close friends, saying things like, "I think I made a mistake," or "She was really different, you know?" Or sometimes not saying anything at all, just carrying it. Now I want to speak directly to the woman who has been or is currently in this situation. Because if you are watching this, you are probably one of two people. You are either currently in something with an avoidant and trying to understand why they keep pulling away from you, even though you can feel that they care, or you have already left or been left by an avoidant and you are somewhere in the middle of processing what that actually was. Either way, I need you to hear something. You are not too much. Say that again in your head. You are not too much. Every time an avoidant pulled away from you, it was not evidence that your love was excessive or your needs were unreasonable. It was evidence of their wound, their limitation, their unfinished work. You were not asking for too much. You were asking for the normal, human things that a healthy relationship is supposed to provide. Consistency, presence, a partner who could occasionally be vulnerable with you without making you feel like you had done something wrong by asking for it. Those are not dramatic requests. Those are the basics. But here is something I also need you to sit with. Something a little harder to hear. Sometimes, in our love for the avoidant, we stop taking care of ourselves. We spend so much time trying to understand them, trying to be patient with them, trying to be the safe space they never had, that we forget to ask whether we are being loved back in the way we actually need. Understanding someone's wound is generous. Sacrificing your own well-being on the altar of their healing is not love. It is self-abandonment dressed up as devotion. The question is not just, why did they pull away? The question is, why did you keep reaching? And look, I am not asking that with judgment. I am asking it because the answer matters. Because if we do not understand what kept us in something that was not fully working, we will find ourselves in the same dynamic again with a different face attached to it. So why do good women stay with avoidance longer than they should? Sometimes it is the intermittent reinforcement. Those moments when the avoidant does let their wall down, when they are suddenly warm, suddenly present, suddenly the person you knew they could be. Those moments are so powerful because they are rare, and rarity creates value in our minds, even when what we really needed was consistency. Sometimes it is the belief that love is supposed to be a project, that if you love someone hard enough, patiently enough, wisely enough, you can help them become who they are capable of being. And sometimes that is even slightly true. But it is not your job to parent a grown person into emotional maturity. That is their job, and it can only happen if they choose it. Sometimes it is your own attachment story. Sometimes the push and pull of an avoidant relationship feels familiar in a way that is almost comfortable, even as it is painful. Because familiar and comfortable are not the same thing. But our nervous systems can confuse them. Whatever the reason, the work is the same. You have to get honest about it. Now let us go back to the avoidant and what they do next. Because this is important for you to understand regardless of whether you are considering going back or firmly moving forward. After the quiet grief begins, after the rewriting of history and the slow dawning of what was lost, many avoidants do one of a few things. Some of them reach out. They send a message, something casual, something with plausible deniability. Hey, just thinking about you. Or they like an old photo. Or they find a reason to text. Some practical thing, some thin excuse to re-establish contact without having to be vulnerable about why they are really doing it. And the woman who still cares, who probably never stopped caring, feels something light up in her chest. Because she has been waiting. Maybe she told herself she had not been waiting, but she has been. And here is the critical moment. What she does next matters enormously. Because if she goes running back to the same dynamic without anything actually having changed, she is not getting a new relationship. She is just reopening the old one with all its old patterns intact. With the avoidant having learned that they can disappear, feel the loss, reach out, and have her back, without having to do any of the actual work that a real change would require. This is not cynicism. This is just pattern recognition. People change. Avoidants absolutely can and do change. Attachment styles are not life sentences, but change requires something specific and consistent and sustained. It requires the avoidant to have genuinely reckoned with their patterns, usually with real support like therapy or at minimum, serious self-examination. It requires them to be able to name what went wrong, not just in the relationship, but in themselves. And it requires them to show that differently over time, not just in a romantic gesture or a heartfelt text at 11 at night. If the avoidant who reaches back out can do those things, can show that differently and sustain it, then a different kind of relationship might be possible. But you have to be clear-eyed enough to see whether that is actually what is happening or whether you are just hopeful enough to mistake effort for transformation. Some avoidants do not reach out. They sit with the loss privately and do nothing. Maybe pride stops them. Maybe fear stops them. Maybe they genuinely believe that she is better off without them. And there is a version of that belief that is actually self-aware, and another version that is just avoidance in a noble costume. And some avoidants go find someone else, not because they are over her, not because they found something better, but because being alone with the feelings is too uncomfortable, and another person is the most efficient distraction available. They will create a new situation and call it moving on, and it will work for a while, until the new relationship requires the same depth and closeness that the last one did, and the pattern will repeat. This is the tragedy of unexamined avoidant attachment. It is not that the person is unlovable or incapable of love. It is that they keep recreating the same experience without understanding why. Now, here is what I want you to take away from all of this, if you are the woman who walked away or who is thinking about it. When you leave, or when you stop chasing, something real happens on their side. Something that they may never fully show you and may never fully admit even to themselves. There is a reckoning. There is a recognition, however delayed, that you were not ordinary. That what you offered was not something they will stumble across again easily. Good women, truly good women, are not as common as the avoidant assumed. They assumed on some unconscious level that another one would come along with the same warmth, the same patience, the same capacity for love. Because in the long stretch of a relationship, they took those qualities for granted. They focused on the discomfort of closeness rather than the gift of the person providing it. And the absence teaches them what they could not learn in the presence. But here is the most important thing I will say in this entire conversation. You cannot wait for that lesson to land. You cannot put your life, your healing, your growth, your heart on hold, hoping that one day the avoidant will learn what you were worth and come back transformed. Because maybe they will. And maybe by then, you will have moved on to something that does not require you to wait years for a man to do the work he should have been doing all along. Your life is happening right now. Not after they figure it out, now. The real question is not what happens to the avoidant when they lose you. The real question is what happens to you. What do you do with the clarity that this experience has offered you? What do you learn about the patterns you participated in? What do you decide you are no longer available for? Because the women who come out of these dynamics strongest are not the ones who waited for the avoidant to change. They are the ones who got radically honest with themselves about what they were tolerating and why. They are the ones who took the pain of it and did something with it, who used it not to become bitter, but to become clearer. Clearer about who they are, what they need, and what kind of love they are willing to accept from this point forward. There is a version of you on the other side of this that does not shrink, that does not over-explain herself, that does not twist herself into shapes trying to be low maintenance enough not to trigger someone's avoidance. That walks into relationships with her full self and lets that be the filter. If someone cannot meet her there, she does not chase them into it. She lets that tell her what she needs to know. That version of you is available, but she is built through exactly the kind of reckoning you are being asked to do right now. So let me leave you with this. The avoidant who loses a good woman does eventually feel it. The loss lands. The regret is real. The recognition of what they had, even if it comes too late, is genuine. But none of that changes anything for you unless you are doing your own work simultaneously. Unless you are asking yourself the hard questions, unless you are honest about your patterns as well as theirs. You were not wrong to love someone who struggled to receive it. That love was real and it was good. but you were perhaps wrong to keep offering it past the point where it was clearly not being met. And understanding that is not about blame. It is about power. It is about recognizing that you have more agency in your love life than you have been exercising. The good news is that agency is still there, waiting. It does not expire. And the moment you stop waiting for someone else to recognize your value and start living from that value yourself, everything changes. Not just who you attract, but how you feel every single day, who you choose to spend your time with, what you decide is and is not acceptable. That is the real story here. Not what the avoidant does when they lose you, but what you do when you finally stop losing yourself. That is everything. If this reached something in you, if it cracked something open or named something you have been feeling but could not quite put into words, then this channel is the place for you. We talk about these things honestly and without the fluff. Drop clarity in the comments if this hit home and subscribe, because we are building toward 1,000 subscribers and every single one matters right now. You deserve love that does not make you question your worth. Never forget that.